Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod and this is Star Wars 7x7, your daily dose of Star Wars joy. And thank you so much for joining me for it. Thank you especially to the people who help support the creation and production of this podcast every single day at patreon.com/SW7x7. All right, so this is our deep dive episode related to episode 4 of The Acolyte entitled Day. And we're going to be talking about the Jedi Order and the fact that, this whole cover-up business, well, this isn't actually new for the Jedi Order, and the Jedi Order's attempts to cover things up in Star Wars storytelling has happened at the highest level of leadership. We can start with the Phantom Menace because Yoda and Mace Windu and company become aware through Obi-Wan's reporting that there is a Sith active in the galaxy, and they don't necessarily know whether it's the Master or the Apprentice, but they keep that fact to themselves. They do not report it or otherwise alert the Senate, alert the Chancellor, who, yes, we know is a Sith, but that's a whole other issue, right? But they just keep it amongst themselves and low play it, right? They don't do anything about it. Then in Attack of the Clones, when Yoda and Mace Windu find out, again through Obi-Wan's help, that there's been a clone army grown entirely under their noses and out of their awareness, they conclude that their force powers may have diminished over time. And Yoda says, nope, we can't tell anybody about this because if we do, then our enemies will multiply. Which does raise the question, who were the Jedi's enemies at this point, right? I mean, I don't have an answer to that. If you have an answer to that, then let me know what that is. You can chime in the comments on YouTube or the Q&A section on Spotify or the blog post for this show's episode at sw7x7.com. And then with reporting from Anakin Skywalker that, oh my gosh, Chancellor Palpatine is actually a Sith Lord, what does Mace Windu do? He does not bring an entire army with him to confront Palpatine. Instead, he brings 3 or 4 Jedi and says, let's have a private battle. But in the end of it, he says that Palpatine is too dangerous to be left alive. So he's trying to figure out how to murder Palpatine and do it under the radar rather than make it a military or police operation. I mean, Palpatine was running the show for more than a decade, and they had had interactions with him prior to that when he was a senator. If they didn't realize that he was a Sith Lord at that point, you would think Mace Windu would be on high alert thinking, oh man, this is a really big deal, and why he only brought 3 Jedi with him instead of just bringing a whole bunch of them? Who knows? But that kind of leans more toward, let's kind of brush this under the rug if we can. And as has been documented in interviews, Leslie Headland, who is the creator and showrunner for The Acolyte, she is definitely a prequel movies fan. So it stands to reason that she would be inspired by the idea of the Jedi covering things up. But this doesn't even only appear in the prequel trilogy. There are also instances in High Republic storytelling in the books and comics where we see the Jedi Order trying to cover up stuff. We first get an idea of this in one of the miniseries in Phase 1 of the High Republic storytelling. That's Trail of Shadows by Daniel Jose Older, where we find out that this planet Dalna is not appearing in the Jedi's records, and that's kind of a little nod, if you will, to what happens with Camino, right? Also disappears from the Jedi's records, but maybe for different reasons. And it turns out that in Phase 2 of the High Republic, we see what happened. There was a giant battle between the Jedi and the Path of the Open Hand on Dalna, and it was an utter and complete massacre. Jedi died, tons of people on Dalna died. It got to the point where basically Dalna became sort of a militarized planet where everybody goes through some sort of combat training. But there's nothing about this history in the Jedi records. On top of that, Yoda, yes, Yoda, and another Jedi Master, Creighton's son, decide that they are going to suppress all knowledge of the Nameless, the creatures that are able to kill the Jedi. And they utterly blank out any records that the Jedi might have had of them for that. So Then, when you get to phase 1 of High Republic storytelling and then on into phase 3, the fact that the Nameless and the Leveler show up again and the Jedi Order has no information about them, no knowledge to combat them, and does Yoda really say anything about this? I know we're still in phase 3 of High Republic storytelling in the novels and comics and whatnot, but yeah, certainly not enough to be able to prevent the deaths of so many Jedi in phase 1 of the storytelling, and then, moving into phase 3 also. So the idea in the Acolyte that the Jedi consider themselves to have political enemies and to consider the actions of a rogue assassin killing Jedi to be potentially scandalous and want to sweep that under the rug or to be able to deal with it as quietly as possible, and to also hide evidence about a difficulty on a planet, Brendok, that perhaps was, partly the Jedi's fault, where the Jedi could be implicated in the massacre of a, sect of Force users. Yes, this definitely aligns with what we were learning about the Jedi Order in the prequels, what we were learning about them in the High Republic, and the idea that eventually the Jedi Order became, more corrupt and more dogmatic to the point where they were not able to sense a Sith operating in their midst, and one of the most powerful Sith in galactic history, and that ultimately led to the fall of the Republic. Not to mention the destruction of the Jedi Order, and that even happening through their manipulation by Palpatine in the Clone Wars, which, were seemingly designed to whittle down the Jedi until Order 66 could be as effective as completely possible. So that's what I've got for you about Jedi cover-ups, which is the subject of our deep dive episode related to episode 4 of The Acolyte, and that is going to do it for this episode of the podcast. If you enjoy the show, I hope you will consider getting the word out to more people for me. That's one favor you can do, and you can do it by leaving ratings and reviews if you haven't done it already, by telling other people that this podcast exists for them, by doing the whole like and subscribe and comment and follow and join, all those fun things. And you can even help me as an independent podcaster putting out this daily dose of Star Wars joy as I have for nearly 10 years, and you can learn more about that at patreon.com/SW7x7. And it just remains for me to say thank you so much for joining me for this episode as always, and may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.
7x7 is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited, or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyrighted by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.